February. And so there's still, and this is Wisconsin, so there's still like, calf deep snow on the ground, basically, that we're trudging through. And the only other weird thing I saw out there was we had stopped on the trail to chat, basically. And so that's when we heard the tree knock, and then it was a little while after that we're still talking, and I see so Jay and Emily are standing on one side of this trail, and I'm standing on the other side, and we're talking to each other, facing each other. And I see behind them in the treetops, I see this light, and so it was like a ball of light that just like lit up like a flash for a second in these trees. And it was the weirdest thing. I didn't know what to make of it. Jade noticed that I had this weird look on my face, and so I told him what I saw, and he was like, "Oh yeah, no, people see that here. It's a normal thing that people see out there." But it was the weirdest thing. Nobody saw it but me because it was behind everybody else. But it couldn't have been an airplane or anything. It was way too high up to be, headlights or something. It was very strange. And so you often get these intersections of different paranormal phenomena. So say UFOs or orbs or something being commonly reported in Bigfoot window areas. Who knows? I mean, it could be some sort of phenomenon related to the sort of like weird unknown natural laws that I was talking about before. Where maybe it's a side effect of areas where interdimensional activity or something takes place. They just have these flashes of light, and somehow it's connected to that. I have no idea, but it was weird, and I definitely saw it. So.
Now, Tobias, what would you and your wife would have done if you would have ran into a Bigfoot? Seriously, I mean, were you prepared psychological that if you ran into one, what you would do?
I like to think so. Personal opinion. If I saw it, what I'd like to think that I would do would be to attempt some sort of communication. People described varying levels of intelligence, when interacting with Bigfoot. And so, if you take sort of the most favorable estimate there, I think you could very well be dealing with something capable of actual communication. And so I would start there. I think the key is, and this is something that we talked about pretty extensively, and Jay and I talked about it quite a bit while we were there too. The real key, I think, is to whatever you do, you don't want to seem aggressive. It would be like running into a bear or something almost. Well, depending on the kind of bear. But you're in its environment, and absolutely the last thing that you would want to do would be to appear like any kind of threat. So I think that people who go out into the woods armed and intend on being really aggressive if they met a Bigfoot, I think those people are going to have a bad time. I see the wisdom in being armed because, frankly, you don't know, and it's not. Of course, I am always armed, and so I understand the value in that. I guess just what I'm saying is, I would hope that people would only consider using something like that if they were in immediate life-threatening danger, because I think if you weren't in immediate life-threatening danger before, you definitely would be after trying to use a firearm on a Bigfoot or something. So I think that calm, careful, non-threatening communication is that's probably the best course of action.
Well, I can honestly say this, that, if you shot one, okay, I don't think you're going to take it out with one shot. I just remember when I was a kid, when my uncle was out hunting and shot a bear, and he shot it, I think, 2 or 3 times, but the bear didn't drop over dead because he didn't get the kill shot. And it mauled him, and he was in the hospital. And, and all I remember that they really thought he was going to die, from the injuries. A lot of broken bones, mauled up like you wouldn't believe, and he carried the scars the rest of his life. But again, you run into a Bigfoot, and how can I say this? If you don't kill it on the first shot, then you're in a lot of trouble, because now you're the aggressor. Now, in a lot of cases, like when I ran in mine, and we ran into the one we ran into, and it chased after us like it did. If we probably would have had a gun, I probably would have used it, and I probably wouldn't be talking to you now. I can honestly say that my friend, who's no longer with us, Art, on his show, had a guy who claimed, a Vietnam vet, him and his buddies were out. Well, they were out, looking for, they were going out and shooting animals at night for their fur. And they saw something. They shot at it. Then they realized what they said in the story on his show, and Art interviewed the guy a lot before and afterwards, that they shot a Bigfoot, and it just didn't drop from one shot. It took like 3 guys shooting at it and emptying their guns to kill it. And then the next morning they went out looking, because they were upset because they weren't sure what they killed, number one. They were worried maybe they killed another hunter or something out there, while they were out there, doing their thing. They go there in the morning.
Well, they're poaching, so they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, they're poaching. So then in the morning they go out there, and then all of a sudden they see another one. So the first thing they did is they supposedly shot and killed that. And when they went over to get the bodies and stuff, they came to the conclusion this was a Bigfoot, but it kind of looked a lot like humans. So they supposedly buried it. And, and the story went on, but Art really believed the story. I mean, the thing is, if you're out there and if you show aggression to them, like any animal, if you show aggression to them, they're gonna, fight back. And, if you just got a gun, like a handgun out there, forget it. You're toast. So if you run into a Bigfoot, the smartest thing you do is back off and see what happens. And evidently if they're out banging and making noise or whatever, if they wanted to get you, they would get you. It's simple. Like when you were out there with your wife and your friend, you smelt the smell. That's the type of smell I smelled. And I've heard that from a lot of people that, claimed that they ran into Bigfoot or were near Bigfoot. So, a lot of times they do follow you around to see what you're doing. Now, if you go into an area where maybe it's mate or it's, family or whatever it is, then that's maybe when you're going to have a major problem.
Yeah, definitely. And again, we're just kind of guessing, I think, at this point on the level of intelligence we're dealing with. But yeah, certainly, I think no matter what that level is, any animal, humans included, if their children feel, or if they feel like their children are being threatened, then yeah, that's certainly going to become a very dangerous situation very, very, very quickly. But it's, again, when you're talking about something like Bigfoot, and you've got all of this weirdness that's at the very least peripherally attached to the larger phenomenon. I mean, are there children really just sitting in like a den somewhere in the forest? Do they even live in the forest? Do they live in like a parallel universe? Do they live in like a mirrored dimension of that forest? Do they live in something we could only sort of perceive of as like a spirit world? I mean, there are so many options there. And I got to tell you, I know, heck, even a lot of my friends who are, well, frankly, a lot more into Bigfoot than I am. Who, they very much believe in the undiscovered, primate hypothesis as far as an explanation for Bigfoot. But I don't know. I mean, I think that Bigfoot is seen in a lot of areas where I just have a really hard time believing that there is a surviving breeding population of things, in the woods of Ohio or something, and just nobody, and they live there as physical animals full time and still remain undiscovered. Like that, to me, like that explanation is actually weirder or more unbelievable than interdimensional travelers or something. So I don't know. I don't know that you would be very likely to necessarily run into any Bigfoot young or anything, especially on an accident. Considering those kinds of circumstances. But obviously, I don't really know. I'm just kind of speculating based on my own research.
Well, too, I was talking to a forest ranger, works for the government, and he explained to me there's a lot of areas in the forest, national forest, where humans haven't even touched, and huge areas where humans have never been in. And you got to think about that. I mean, just, like, I don't think you're going to go to a campground, okay, and walk for a 10-minute hike away from the campground and run into a Bigfoot. Maybe you might, but I just don't think it. I think you have to be somewhere out, away from, mankind, because just like as the cities keep growing and towns keep growing, animals disappear. Where do they go? They go deeper into the woods, or they die. But maybe they go through portals. I don't know. Maybe they're alien connected. None of us know. I honestly, and I got heat on this 2 weeks ago, and I shouldn't repeat it. But maybe it's going to take someday, somebody's going to be out there with a rifle and kill a Bigfoot and get it back to civilization. And that way the scientists and all the officials, then they got proof that, hey, this Bigfoot does exist. Then at that point, they can pass laws to, make it, where if you kill a Bigfoot, you go to prison, like murder or whatever they want to do. But I think that's what it's honestly going to take. It's going to take some type of proof of a physical body to end and prove that it exists.
Sure. I mean, that's a very, I think, unpopular, but probably, very pragmatic opinion. I mean, sure. I think that you would probably find a lot of the researchers who believe in the undiscovered primate hypothesis. I mean, most of them, of which I'm aware, would think that that's absolutely correct. And so, yeah, I mean, if and you're absolutely right. If what we are dealing with is an undiscovered species, then the only way that mainstream science is going to accept it is if there is a specimen. And maybe you can take one alive, but how often in recorded history has that ever happened? It's a lot easier, especially something like that. It would be a lot easier to bring back a body than it would to bring back a captive. So